Nate walked into the barn to find his father waiting, holding a coiled rope like a judge holding a gavel. "You've brought shame to this house," he said. "And for what? Some girl who don't belong here." Nate's fists clenched. "She belongs as much as anyone." His father's face turned red. "You think love pays bills? You think love works the land? Boy, you're playing with fire you don't understand." Meanwhile, Bella's father packed their few belongings into a sack. "They're going to run us off," he muttered. "I can feel it. You need to stay away from that boy, Bella. If they come for us, we'll have nowhere left to go." Bella grabbed his arm. "Papa, please." "No," he shouted, louder than she'd ever heard. "No more dreams that don't belong to us." Bella ran to the creek, tears spilling down her face. She didn't care who saw. She just needed to breathe where the air still remembered their laughter. But even the creek seemed quieter now, as if holding its breath for what was about to unfold. That evening, Nate found her there. He didn't speak. He just held her. And for a small, fleeting moment, they pretended the world outside didn't exist. But the world didn't care for their pretending. The following day, Nate's father met with Eddie Turner's father and 2 other landowners. Their voices rose like storm winds inside the farmhouse. Nate pressed his ear against the wall, catching only fragments. Migrant trouble, disgrace. Make an example. Outside, a group of men gathered near the edge of the fields. Men with hard eyes and easy anger. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It was planning. That night, Nate snuck out again. This time not for whispers by the creek, but for something bigger. "We need to leave," he told Bella, his voice shaking but firm. "Tonight, before they decide for us." Bella stared at him, torn between fear and hope. "Leave? Go where?" "Anywhere that ain't here," Nate replied. "I'd rather build a life in the unknown than die a slow death here." For the first time, Bella saw the fire in him. Not just the boy she loved, but the man he was becoming. She nodded slowly. "Then let's do it." They planned their escape beneath the old willow by the creek, their hands intertwined, their voices low like wind slipping through cracks. But as they spoke, a twig snapped nearby. Someone was listening. The night swallowed the sound, but the danger grew closer with every heartbeat. The night air felt thick, like it carried too many secrets. Nate and Bella stood by the creek, their whispered plans dancing with the sound of running water. They didn't see the man crouched behind the old willow, Eddie Turner, his grin stretching wider with every word he overheard. He didn't just want to ruin their love. He wanted to watch it burn. As Nate walked Bella back to the edge of the workers' tents, Eddie slipped away like a snake in the grass. He headed straight to Nate's father's house. Lantern light flickered against the wooden walls as he banged on the door. "You'd better get your boy," Eddie said, his voice sweet with venom. "He's fixin' to run away with that migrant girl tonight. Thought you oughta know." Nate's father didn't reply. He just stared at Eddie, his jaw tightening, his knuckles white against the doorframe. When Eddie left, the old man reached for his coat and shotgun, moving with the slow, heavy certainty of a man who intended to stop something. Meanwhile, back by the barn, Nate crept inside to pack a few things. Some clothes, a bit of food, his mother's old locket. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of the choice he'd made. He heard footsteps outside, then the creak of the door. His father stood there in the dark, blocking the way. "You're not leavin'," his father said. His voice was low, dangerous. Nate straightened. "Yes, I am." They stared at each other in silence, like 2 stubborn trees refusing to bend. And then, without warning, his father reached for the shotgun leaning against the wall. Nate didn't flinch. "If you're gonna stop me," he said softly, "you better be ready to shoot your own blood." The old man's hand trembled on the barrel. He didn't lift it, but he didn't step aside either. The night held its breath, waiting for the first move. Bella was waiting at the creek, clutching the small sack she'd packed. Her father had fallen asleep early, weary from a day of angry murmurs and suspicious stares. She kept glancing toward the barn path, her heart thudding in her chest like a drum calling something wild. Minutes turned to what felt like hours. Then she heard footsteps. But it wasn't Nate. It was Eddie. "Well, ain't this sweet?" he drawled, stepping into the lantern glow. "You really thought you could run off with him, didn't you?" Bella stepped back, clutching her sack tighter. "Leave me alone, Eddie." He laughed. "Oh, I ain't here to hurt you. I'm just here to make sure everybody sees what kind of trouble you really are. They'll love this. Migrant girl runs off with farmer's boy." He mimicked a newspaper headline and laughed again. But Bella wasn't the same timid girl she'd been weeks ago. She lifted her chin. "You don't scare me." "Oh, sweetheart," he said, stepping closer. "I ain't here to scare you. I'm here to end your little fairy tale." Before he could say another word, Nate appeared behind him, breathless, his eyes blazing. "Step away from her, Eddie." Eddie turned slowly, smirking. There he is, the runaway prince. The air grew sharp like a bowstring pulled too tight. No one moved. The creek bubbled softly, unaware it was now the stage for something dangerous. Eddie lunged first. Nate met him halfway. The two boys crashed to the ground, fists flying, grunts echoing through the night. Bella screamed, her lantern tumbling into the creek with a hiss. Darkness swallowed them whole. They rolled through the mud, punching, kicking, neither willing to give ground. Eddie's knuckles cracked against Nate's jaw, but Nate didn't back down. He tackled Eddie, shoving him hard against a tree. "You don't get to decide our lives," Nate shouted. Eddie spat blood and laughed. "I already did." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small flare. With a wicked grin, he struck it. Red light exploded into the night, lighting up the field like a warning fire. From a distance, dogs began to bark. Men's voices rose. Lanterns flickered to life across the farm. "They're comin'," Eddie sneered. "And when they find you two here, well, let's just say they don't like stories that end with love." Bella grabbed Nate's arm. "We have to go. Now." Nate looked at Eddie one last time. "You'll regret this." Then they ran into the woods, away from the glowing flare, away from the world that refused to let them be. Behind them, the sound of boots and angry shouts grew louder. The night had chosen its side, and this time there was no turning back. The woods wrapped around them like a dark, breathing animal. Branches snapped under their feet, and leaves whispered secrets overhead. Nate held Bella's hand as they ran, their breaths coming in ragged bursts. Behind them, shouts grew clearer. Men with lanterns and dogs, spreading out like a hunting party. "Keep going," Nate whispered, pulling her along a narrow path he knew well. As a boy, he'd come here to escape chores and think by himself. Now, that same path was their only chance. Bella stumbled on a root, nearly falling. Nate caught her before she hit the ground. "You okay?" She nodded, though her chest heaved. "I'm fine. Just don't let go." They pushed deeper into the woods until the lantern lights were no longer visible. Finally, they stopped by a clearing near an abandoned cabin. One Nate's grandfather had built decades ago. The roof sagged, the door hung crooked, but it offered shelter. They slipped inside. It smelled like old wood and forgotten time. Nate barred the door with a wooden beam while Bella collapsed against the wall, trying to steady her breath. "They'll find us," she whispered. "Not tonight," Nate replied. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. "They'll search the fields first. They won't expect us to come this far this fast." Bella stared at him through the dim light of the moon slipping through cracks in the wall. "Nate, what happens if they catch us?" He didn't answer right away. He walked over, knelt in front of her, and took her hands. "They won't," he said finally, "because I won't let them." For the first time that night, Bella let herself believe him. Just a little. Back on the farm, the men gathered near the creek. Eddie stood proudly beside his father, the red flare still hissing in the mud like a dying serpent. Nate's father arrived moments later, shotgun slung over his shoulder, his face tight with shame and fury. "They ran into the woods," Eddie announced, puffing out his chest. "Saw 'em with my own eyes." Turner's father spat into the dirt. "Then we go after 'em." Can't have a boy disgracin' his name runnin' off with one of them. Nate's father hesitated. They're just kids, he muttered. Turner gave a sharp laugh. Ain't no kids when you ruin a family's name. You either bring him back, or we will. The men grabbed lanterns, dogs barked wildly, and a hunt began. Meanwhile, Bella's father woke to the commotion. Someone had told him about the flare. He rushed out of his tent, grabbing a lantern. "Where's Bella?" he shouted. One of the workers pointed toward the woods. His heart sank like a stone thrown in deep water. Without another word, he ran in that direction, not as part of the hunt, but as a father chasing his daughter before the world could hurt her. The cabin creaked with the weight of the night. Nate sat by the window, peering through a small crack. The lantern lights were scattered far back in the woods but moving closer, like stars being dragged by angry hands. Bella huddled under an old blanket, her face pale in the moonlight. "What if they hurt you?" she whispered. Nate turned to her. "I'm more worried about them hurtin' you." She reached for his hand. "Then we don't separate. Whatever happens, we stay together." He nodded, squeezing her hand back. Together. Just then, they heard footsteps outside, light, cautious, not like the heavy stomps of the search party. Nate froze. Someone was moving slowly around the cabin. Bella's eyes widened. "Nate!" He grabbed a rusty farming tool from the corner and stood ready. The door creaked slightly, as if someone was testing it. "Bella!" A voice hissed. Her breath caught. "Papa!" She rushed to the door and pulled it open. Her father slipped inside quickly, shutting it behind him. His face was wet with sweat and worry. "You two have no idea what kind of fire you lit," he said, voice shaking. "They're comin', and if they find you here, it won't end with talkin'." Nate straightened. "Then help us, please." For a long moment, Bella's father looked between the two of them. Then he sighed, shoulders heavy with love and fear. "All right," he said softly. "But if we're gonna do this, we need to move before they circle back." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the sound of distant barking closer. The night wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. The woods were colder than before, and the moon had climbed higher, watching everything like a silent witness. Bella's father led the way through a narrow deer trail, his lantern wrapped in cloth to dim the light. Nate followed close behind, his hand gripping Bella's as if letting go meant losing everything. "We're headin' toward the old railway," Bella's father whispered. "If we can make it there before dawn. There's a train that passes through just after sunup. It don't stop here, but it slows near the bend. You can catch it if you're brave enough." Nate nodded, his heartbeat quickening. "We're brave." Bella wasn't so sure. Every snap of a twig behind them made her flinch. The barking had faded for a moment, but shouts still echoed faintly through the trees, like thunder far away. As they moved, Nate noticed how Bella's father kept looking over his shoulder, not just for the men, but as if he were carrying something heavier than fear. Finally, Nate whispered, "Why are you helping us?" Bella's father didn't stop walking. "Because I've seen what happens when love gets crushed under other folks' rules. I ain't letting it happen again." They reached a small ravine, its floor covered in slippery rocks and cold water. They climbed down carefully, using tree roots as ropes. Halfway through, Nate slipped, pulling Bella with him. She gasped as icy water splashed up her legs. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded, shivering but determined. "Keep going." By the time they climbed out the other side, their clothes were soaked, their breaths showing in the cool night air. But the sound of barking had picked up again, closer now. The hunt wasn't giving up. Neither were they. Back at the farm, Nate's father stood at the edge of the woods, staring into the darkness. The men had spread out in different directions, their lanterns bobbing like angry fireflies. Eddie Turner strutted beside his father, enjoying every bit of the chaos he'd started. "Should have stopped him sooner," Turner said coldly. "That boy's gone wild." Nate's father didn't reply. His grip on the shotgun had loosened. Deep down, something inside him had cracked. Not in anger, but in doubt. He thought about his late wife, how she used to hum songs about love stronger than rules. She would have stood between Nate and the world if she were still here. You comin' or not? Eddie barked. He looked into the woods once more. Then, without a word, he lowered the shotgun and started walking. Not after Nate, but along a side path only he knew. Something in his face had changed. Meanwhile, Eddie, impatient, took 2 men and followed the barking dogs. We'll find M before sunrise, he sneered. And somewhere deep in those woods, the paths of father and son were slowly, unknowingly drawing closer. They reached the railway clearing just as the sky began to pale with the first hint of dawn. The old tracks cut through the forest like a scar. A low, distant rumble told them the train was coming soon. Bella's father turned to them. Once you get on that train, don't look back. You hear me? Don't look back. Bella grabbed his hands, tears brimming. Come with us, Papa. He shook his head. I'm a worker here. If I disappear, they'll come after me too. I'll go back, say I don't know where you went. It'll buy you time. Nate placed a hand on his shoulder. Thank you. He nodded, his eyes wet but fierce. Take care of her, boy. Love ain't for the faint-hearted. Then the train whistle blew, long, low, haunting. The ground began to shake. Nate's heart pounded like it wanted to run ahead. The train came around the bend, slowing but not stopping. This is it, Bella whispered. They stepped toward the tracks, clutching their small bundles. But before they could move closer, they heard shouting behind them. Lanterns flashed through the trees. Eddie's voice rang out. There they are! Bella's father spun around, blocking the path. Go! He shouted. The train roared closer. Nate grabbed Bella's hand. They ran toward the tracks as the first rays of sun spilled over the trees, turning everything gold. Behind them, men shouted, dogs barked, boots pounded the earth. And ahead of them, freedom was moving fast. The train thundered closer, the iron wheels clattering like a giant heartbeat. Nate and Bella reached the edge of the clearing just as the first car whooshed past. Wind slapped their faces, carrying grit and smoke. It was faster than they expected, louder too. Can we do this? Bella shouted over the roar. Nate tightened his grip on her hand. We have to. They ran alongside the train, their boots pounding the earth, hearts beating wild. Bella spotted an open boxcar door a few carriages down. There! She cried. They pushed harder, their soaked clothes clinging, legs burning. Behind them, shouts grew louder. Eddie burst through the tree line with 2 men and their dogs. He pointed toward the tracks. Don't let M get away. The dogs barked furiously, straining against their leashes. Eddie raised his rifle not to kill but to scare. A shot cracked through the air, splintering a nearby tree trunk. Bella screamed but didn't stop. Nate shielded her as they reached the open boxcar. Go first, he yelled. Bella grabbed the edge of the doorway and, with every ounce of strength, pulled herself up. Nate pushed her from below, then leapt up right after her, barely catching the ledge as the train gained speed. His feet dragged for a terrifying moment before he swung himself inside. They collapsed on the wooden floor, gasping, shaking, covered in dirt and sweat. The train roared on, carrying them farther with every turn of the wheels. Eddie reached the tracks too late, his face twisting with rage as the train disappeared down the line. He kicked the gravel hard. This ain't over, he shouted into the rising sun. But his voice was swallowed by the wind. Inside the boxcar, the world felt suddenly quiet. The rattling of the train was steady, almost like a lullaby after the chaos. Nate leaned back against the wall, chest still heaving, and looked at Bella. She was staring out the open door, the dawn light painting her face in soft gold. We did it, she whispered. Nate reached over and took her hand. Yeah, we really did. For a brief, precious moment, it felt like they'd left all the hate and danger behind. The fields, the barking dogs, the shouting men. All of it was shrinking into memory. Bella leaned her head on Nate's shoulder. What now? She asked softly. He smiled, tired but determined. We find a place where nobody tells us who we're allowed to love. She laughed quietly through her tears. That sounds like a good place. They watched the trees roll by. Neither of them noticed the man sitting at the far end of the boxcar until he cleared his throat. An older man with a scruffy beard, dusty clothes, and sharp eyes. Y'all ain't exactly seasoned travelers, he drawled. Nate tensed, but the man held up his hands. Relax, boy. Ain't here to harm ya. Just sayin', folks who run without a plan usually find themselves hungry by nightfall. Nate and Bella exchanged uneasy glances. Their escape was real, but so was the uncertainty ahead. Back on the farm, Nate's father stood by the tracks long after everyone else had left. Eddie and his father were fuming, muttering about calling the sheriff, making examples. Bringing the boy back in chains if we have to. But Nate's father didn't speak. He stared at the faint trail of smoke on the horizon, thinking of his son clinging to that train. His heart was a battlefield, half filled with the weight of his family's name, half with the ghost of his wife's voice saying, "Let the boy live his heart." He walked slowly back to the barn, shotgun hanging limp at his side. Inside, everything felt too quiet. The lantern flickered, throwing shadows on the walls where Nate had grown up. That night, while the others plotted how to find the runaways, he sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. They were calloused, cracked from years of work. But now, for the first time, they trembled. "I hope you find what I couldn't," he whispered to the night. Out in the woods, Eddie wasn't ready to give up. "We'll track him down," he told the other men. "Train don't run forever. I'll make sure they regret ever thinkin' they could run." And somewhere far ahead, the train kept rolling toward a future Nate and Bella couldn't yet see. A future full of both promise and danger, waiting like dawn beyond the horizon. The train rolled on through the countryside, the morning sun climbing higher. Nate and Bella huddled together in the corner of the boxcar, the wind rushing past the open doorway. The older man with the scruffy beard studied them with a knowing look, like he'd seen 100 stories just like theirs. "You two runnin' from somethin', or to somethin'?" he asked. Nate straightened, still catching his breath. "Both," he said. The man chuckled softly. "Ain't that the truth for most folks on this line?" He reached into his worn satchel and pulled out a small cloth bundle. Inside were 2 pieces of cornbread and a bit of dried meat. "Y'all look like you could use a bite." Bella hesitated, but Nate accepted. "Thank you, sir. Name's Silas," the man said. "Been riding these rails since before you were born, I reckon. Where you headed?" Nate exchanged a glance with Bella. "North," he said finally. "Somewhere we can start over." Silas nodded slowly, chewing on a piece of bread. "North's a long way. Ain't kind to folks without a plan. But if you've got grit, maybe you'll make it." Bella leaned closer. "Can you help us?" Silas looked at her kindly. "Maybe I can point you in the right direction. But help comes with honesty. You tell me the truth, and I'll see what I can do." So, between rattling wheels and the clatter of the train, Nate told him everything. About Eddie, about the farm, about their love. Silas listened without judgment, his eyes thoughtful. When Nate finished, the old man whistled low. "Well now," he said. "Sounds like y'all set the whole hornet's nest on fire." Nate nodded. "We couldn't stay." Silas smiled faintly. "Then you best be ready to keep runnin'. 'Cause men like Eddie don't quit easy." The train slowed as it approached a small freight yard on the edge of a dusty town. Silas rose, brushing off his trousers. "This is as far as I go on this run. Y'all can jump here or keep riding till the next stop. But if you jump, stick to the alleys and keep your heads low. Folks round here don't take kindly to strangers, especially ones who look like trouble." Nate tightened his grip on Bella's hand. "We'll go with you," he said. They leapt off as the train creaked to a stop, landing hard on the gravel. Silas led them through narrow back streets that smelled of oil, hay, and smoke. Bella clung to Nate's arm, her heart thumping. Everywhere she looked, rough men loaded cargo, horses clopped past, and eyes followed them with suspicion. They ducked into a weathered barn on the edge of town. Inside, Silas showed them a loose panel in the wall. Behind it was a small, hidden space, dusty but safe. You can lay low here till night, he whispered. Then I'll take you to a friend. She owes me a favor. Might give you a place to stay, if she likes your faces. Bella's eyes filled with quiet gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. Silas tipped his hat. Don't thank me yet, girl. This world don't hand out kindness for free, but sometimes it hands you a chance. Don't waste it. He slipped away, leaving Nate and Bella alone in the silence of the barn. For the first time, they weren't running. They were hiding and waiting. Meanwhile, miles away, Eddie was already on their trail. He rode into town with 2 men and fresh horses, his face set like stone. They caught the northbound freight, he told the sheriff, slamming his hand on the desk. They're fugitives. We gotta bring 'em back. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. Fugitives? Or just kids running off? Eddie's eyes darkened. She's mine, he hissed. And he's a thief. He stole what was promised. The sheriff sighed. I'll put the word out, Eddie. But this ain't a manhunt. Don't go stirrin' trouble. Eddie tipped his hat, but his smirk said otherwise. Outside, he gathered his men. They think they can outrun me, he muttered. They don't know me at all. He followed the train's route, stopping in every yard, asking questions, waving money. A station worker pointed north. Saw a couple jumping off near Bramble Creek Yard, the man said. Eddie grinned. Then that's where we ride. And as night crept in over the little town, Nate and Bella didn't know that the very footsteps they'd fled were already echoing closer. The night air had a strange heaviness to it, like the sky was holding its breath. Nate waited behind the old oak tree near the riverbank, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets, eyes scanning the dirt path that led through the fields. He'd sent a message to Bella through Jonah's little sister, telling her to meet him here. He didn't know if she'd come. After everything that had happened, her father's arrest, the sheriff's threats, his own daddy's silence. It was a dangerous thing just to see each other. When he finally saw her figure in the moonlight, his heart skipped like a stone on water. She came slowly, wrapped in her thin shawl, her eyes red from crying but still burning with that quiet strength he'd come to love. You shouldn't be here, she whispered as she reached him. Neither should you, he answered softly. But I had to see you. Bella, things are getting worse. She nodded. They took Papa to the city. Mama is packing what little we got left. Sheriff said we should leave before sunrise or he'll make us disappear too. Nate clenched his fists. That sheriff don't scare me. And my daddy, he's acting like nothing's wrong. Like the fields matter more than people. Bella stepped closer. Nate, I don't want you to get in trouble because of me. He shook his head. Bella, I ain't letting you disappear like smoke in the wind. Not like this. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The frogs croaked. The river whispered. And then Nate took her hands in his. Run away with me, he said. Her eyes widened. What? Run away with me. Tonight. We follow the river, cross through Johnson's woods, and keep going till we reach Greenville. I got a cousin there. He'll help us. Bella's breath caught. The world seemed to tilt. Nate, are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The night held their secret like a promise. But somewhere far off, a twig snapped in the dark. Someone was listening. The next morning came too soon. Nate barely slept, his mind tangled between fear and determination. He'd packed a small bag, just some clothes, a little food, and the old compass his grandpa gave him. But before he could leave, his father found him near the barn. Where you going with that bag, boy? His father asked, his deep voice like rolling thunder. Nate froze. I was just... Don't lie to me. I saw you slipping out last night. You were with that girl, weren't you? Nate swallowed hard. Her name's Bella. His father's eyes hardened. She's trouble, Nate. Her people don't belong here. Sheriff's right about one thing. Migrants come, stir things up, and leave a mess behind. You're a Jacobs. You got responsibilities. Responsibilities to what? Nate shot back. The land? The crops? Or to doing what's right? His father stepped closer, lowering his voice. To this family. To this farm. You run off with that girl, and you'll bring shame on all of us. Nate's jaw tightened. Then maybe I don't want to be part of this, all of us. The silence between them cracked like dry wood. His father's face darkened with something between anger and hurt. Don't be foolish, son. That girl ain't your future. Nate met his father's gaze, steady as a rooted tree. She's my choice. Before his father could answer, Jonah came running from the fields, panting. Nate, Bella's family, they're leaving now. Sheriff's men are at their tent. You better hurry. Nate didn't look back. He grabbed his bag and ran like the wind through the fields, his father's voice calling his name fading behind him. The decision had been made. There was no turning back. By the time Nate reached the migrant camp, it was chaos. Men shouted. Women cried. Children clung to their mothers as the sheriff's men threw belongings into wagons. Bella stood near the fire pit, clutching a small wooden box to her chest, her face pale but defiant. Bella! Nate called. She turned, eyes wide. Nate! He rushed to her side. Come on. We gotta go. Now. I can't leave Mama, she said, her voice trembling. Her mother was arguing with one of the deputies, begging them not to take their things. The sheriff himself sat on his horse, watching with a cold grin. Load 'em up, he barked. We ain't got all day. Nate grabbed Bella's hand. If we wait, we'll lose our chance. I got a way out through the woods, but we gotta trust each other. Tears filled her eyes. She looked at her mother, then back at him. If we go, they'll come after us. They'll come anyway, Nate said. But together we stand a chance. She hesitated for one heartbeat too long. A deputy noticed Nate and shouted, Hey, you! Get away from her! Everything exploded at once. Men running, women screaming, deputies pushing through the crowd. Nate pulled Bella and they ran, weaving through tents, ducking under ropes, their feet pounding the earth. Bullets didn't fly, but voices did. Angry, desperate, loud. They broke through the fence at the back of the camp and disappeared into the tall grass, hearts thundering, lungs burning. The sheriff's voice echoed behind them like a curse. Find them. Bring him back. The river waited up ahead. So did the woods. And somewhere beyond, a dangerous kind of freedom. They didn't look back. They couldn't.